Halloween, a dark night set on the last day of October. A night of all the happy little kids dressed up in costumes feeding off the candy of houses everywhere. A night where we set jack-o'-lanterns outside of the house for all the little kiddies to come. A night filled with monster movies that showcases murder, blood, and terror. And yet, for some people, it is also a time for monster video games. That's what we're gonna do today. We are gonna play a game to celebrate this Halloween season. This is a game that has been released for the Wiiware relatively recently. That game is Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth. Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth. The third game in the Konami Rebirth series, next to Gradius Rebirth and Contra Rebirth. The game takes place 100 years after Dracula's demise in the first Castlevania game on the NES. Wow, it seems like there's a lot of members in the Belmont family that fought monsters and vampires. Guess it runs in the family. Anyway, the game is based on Castlevania The Adventure on Game Boy. Yeah, that's right, Castlevania The Adventure out of all Castlevania games. Seeing as how it's one of the worst games in the Castlevania series, I wonder what Konami has planned by making a new game in the series. Now this is what I'm talking about. It turns out that this game takes the Castlevania Adventure game on Game Boy and combined it with the classic Castlevania games that is on the NES. And I think the reason they did this with Castlevania The Adventure on Game Boy is to make it a more worthy addition to the series, since it sucked really hard. And that's rightfully so, because the result went from this to this. There is way more added to this new version than there is on the original version. There is more enemies from the older Castlevania games thrown in this new version, and there's a lot more variety that makes this a lot better than the original. One problem that the Castlevania game on Game Boy had is that your character moved ridiculously slow. Come on! Could you possibly move any slower? That just makes it incredibly painful. Thank God Konami learned a lesson on that by actually making a move in a much smoother direction. While Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth has some of the enemies from the older Castlevania games, it also had its fair share of enemies from the original Game Boy game. One of them includes the eyeballs, except the difference there is that in the original, they just appear out of nowhere. It's never explained where they came from, you just encounter them, and that's pretty much it. In the new game, these eyeballs come from these head statues. At least that's how it is in the first level. They also come out from a couple other places in the later stages of the game. There's also times when they would come out of other holes. There's also parts where they would come out of nowhere, like in the original. Another thing that this game has is weapons. Yes! Weapons! Ah, thank God! That was another thing that was neglected in the Game Boy game. In there, you only have your whip. That's it. Absolutely nothing else. In this new version, the weapons from the NES Castlevania games return, such as axes, clocks, holy water, and knives. You know what else I like about this game? That there's a big usage of secret passages. There are times when you grab a key, and then you open this door to the left. But once you open that door, then later, you would realize that if you kept that key, then there's another door that's there if you kept it. So you would have to take the other direction and not open the door that you wanted to open. There's also another instance where there's a door above. You open that, and you access the switch for the bridge, which allows you to cross. You know, it's these type of simple things that makes this game very unique and interesting to progress. And let's not forget about the difficulty. Just like with the old Castlevania games, this game is presented with a challenge that requires some skill to complete. If I were to talk about the difficulty to this game, it would pretty much rank up to the level of the first Castlevania game on the NES. The game has up to 6 stages, all of which keeps getting progressively harder, and each containing 2 bosses. There's also a mini-boss that comes up when you're about halfway through the level, and there's a boss of the whole level. There are a bunch of cool bosses that you fight in this game. One example is the Phantom Bat from Stage 1. Yep, that's right. You can't have an old-school style Castlevania game without including the giant bat. You just can't. There is also one where you fight, this giant amoeba thing. Okay, well that's not that great, but if there is one stage that I was having trouble with, it's at Stage 4. There is one part where you see yourself in a rather confusing room, where if you take the top part of the room, then you end up what looks like at the bottom. But it's really the top because the door below just takes you to the same place. There's also a room with a ton of dragon skulls. For that, you would have to have your longer whip in order to get all of them. So if you don't get that upgraded whip that's pretty much through the locked door, then you're pretty much screwed. It was hard, but once you get through that, then you'll be able to fight a female vampire. I'm not sure what she is exactly, but I believe that she's a succubus. After all, that's pretty much something that I've seen in some of the other Castlevania games, such as Symphony of the Night. So it's possible that she's a succubus from this game as well. For a female vampire, that's probably the most logical explanation for that. And of course, at the final stage of the game, there's the final battle with Dracula. Alright, we have come this far at last. Now, it's time to stock up on items. Just like in the first Castlevania game, Dracula comes in 3 different forms. His first form is the plain regular Dracula who shoots fireballs at you, and then he turns into a giant creature. Alright, I beat him! Oh wait, there's more. Now, here comes Dracula's final form, the Giant Demon. And, you guessed it, he's the toughest form of Dracula. When battling him, he throws a lot on screen, such as lightning bolts, explosions, and those eyeball things again that would come together and diamonds inside of them would come out. Now that is quite a final battle that you eventually complete if you have a lot of skill like I do. Overall, Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth is a very worthy addition to the Castlevania series, and it is much better than the original game on Game Boy. Like I said before, I would pretty much count this as the Castlevania The Adventure game and forget that the Game Boy game ever existed. Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth receives a score of 9 out of 10. The good things that I have to say about the game is that it's a good throwback to the classic Castlevania games, and a great upgrade to the Game Boy game. The enemy selection does not disappoint in this game, and the weapons are back! Yay! The only bad thing I could really say about this game is that there isn't really a lot of new innovation to the old school Castlevania games. Pretty much, it's just a classic style game. Nothing more, nothing less. Be sure to check out the official Screw Attack page for Blueluigi's video game reviews by going to screwattack.com/shows/Blueluigi video game reviews. It has all the episodes uploaded in order and uncut, so you can watch them there. And it's also going to be where the reviews are going to be posted first before it's shown on YouTube. Alright, so that's it for today. I hope you guys have a happy Halloween. Remember, play it safe and don't eat too much candy and get sick from it too. So, I'll see you next time.